we want to focus on some issues. The role of industry as a driver for innovation, for growth and employment, how to balance the competitiveness of industry with energy and climate changes, and how to continue to open new markets for European products and to overcome skepticism over the benefits of international trade that some parts of public opinion maintain. So to this discussion, I'm proud to call Maria João Rodrigues, Vice President of the Socialists and Democrats Group in the European Parliament. Thank you. Please. Nicholas Buck, President of FEDIL, Luxembourg. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Loic Armand, Chairman of European Committee at MEDEF, France. Good morning. Guilherme Ulacia. Ulacia? Ulacia, thank you. Morning. He's President of Industry and Energy Committee at COE, Spain. Markus Beyrer, Director General of BusinessEurope. And Luís Mir Amaral, President of CIP's Industry, Council of Industry. Thank you all for coming. Well, I start this debate with a generic question for all of you, which is how can European industry recover the share of the sector in our economy, in our GDP? And I want you to, as well as the new British question, the Brexit vote, and how can Europe handle with that, especially for Maria João Rodrigues, which is in the center of this discussion in the European Parliament. Please.
Well, I'm Portuguese, but I was invited to speak in English, and we'll go on in English. I'm very pleased to be with you, and many thanks for this opportunity to address this audience. And in fact, I'm just coming from Brussels, from the turmoil created by the so-called Brexit. And let me tell you the following. Of course, everybody feels that we are in a kind of a crossroads of the European history. When it comes Brexit, the message provided by both the European Parliament and the European Council was clear. Was to say that we respect, this was decided upon a referendum, but we also state our clear position that you need to clarify your choice. If you decide to notify that you want to leave the European Union, then we open a negotiation on the terms of this leaving process and also on the terms of a new relationship, which of course should be a positive one. And the other key message is that regarding European single market, this market is on 4 very clear principles of freedom, and we don't intend to give up of these 4 freedoms principle underpinning the single market. And the third message is that the European Union is confident on its own potential. Well, now let me tell you what I really think about Brexit, because I think this is also the moment to say that even if we respect, we regret, because this is not a good choice. And this is a choice to address the key challenges the European Union is confronted with, and all its member states. If you think about the so-called challenge of migration and refugees, can we say that the right solution is to go back to national borders and to give up the Schengen area? Not at all. On the contrary, we need to protect the Schengen area and we need to provide it with a real European border. If we are dealing with global markets and we want to make the best of these, the solution is certainly not to go back to individual trade agreements to be negotiated between each member state and their partners at international level. This is the wrong choice. And if we think about the way to promote investment, growth, and jobs, the solution is certainly not to national markets. We need to protect the single market. And finally, the currency, because we don't have a common currency, which has problems, and I will speak about this, but nevertheless, we do need single currency to counterweight the influence of dollar or renminbi. This is a critical instrument of European sovereignty. So this is the moment for us to be very clear on the choice to be taken. And of course, I think that the business in Europe has a particular role to play in this situation. I must tell you that in my role as vice president of my group, so my group is involving members from the 20 member states of the European Union, but I'm also dealing with the Commission, the commissioners, the vice presidents. Right now I'm in talks with the vice president of the Commission and also the governments in order to define a roadmap for the European Union for the period to come. And again, I think that the contribution coming from the business community can be extremely important. Really appreciate the message coming from both Emma Marchigali and Antonio Saraiva, because they were very clear on the need to, in a way, I think we should have, I would like to underline 4 key priorities. One is, of course, we need to change our relationship in the neighborhood. Europe needs to have a much more powerful action of cooperation with neighborhood, stabilization, development, because this is the only way to manage properly the migration pressure. This is a long-term pressure which is there, and everybody knows this. But we believe that we can turn this also into an opportunity for investing in the neighborhood of Europe and stabilizing this neighborhood. But the second is, even the neighborhood now is bringing us a lot of problems. We cannot give up of our ambition, global ambition. And that's why the strategic partnerships of Europe and the trade agreements, investment agreements which are being negotiated, we need to go on with this. This is really crucial because Europe remains and should remain a European, a central global actor. Then we have a third priority, which is to create the conditions for future-oriented investment. Exactly now, when everybody understands that the ongoing digital revolution, this is the biggest digital revolution ever. This is not only about telecommunications or content industry. This is about everything, reorganizing, completing the way industry and services are developed. So we need to be in the leading role of this revolution. We cannot lose the ground. And of course, also making the best of the energy transition. So these are 2 big challenges to drive the industrial ambition of Europe. And about that, I'd like to tell you something. We made a particular effort with this Commission and European Parliament to come up with this so-called Juncker investment plan. And we have, I think, a positive start, but we should be aware that the scale of this investment is still clearly below what is needed. We need at least 3 times more than this, of this scale, to address the investment gap we have in Europe. And of course, now we are discussing the new phase of this European investment plan, but I need to be very frank with this audience by saying, because I'm really deeply involved in this discussion, I think that if you want to create better conditions to invest in Europe, we also address another problem, which has to do on the way our monetary zone is working. In the Eurozone, we have even highest investment gap. So something is wrong in the way the Eurozone is working. This can become a powerful monetary zone, but something should be completed. And right now, even today, I'm in talks with the Vice President of the Commission about this, because we need to move forward with this ambition. We had the 5 Presidents report outlining the way to complete this economic monetary union, and particularly with a banking union and a fiscal capacity. A banking union is crucial to make sure that the available savings in European member states can again circulate across the European space and go to the regions and countries where we need to have more resources to invest. This is the normal way for a monetary zone to work. And unfortunately, our current monetary zone is not working like that. We have a kind of fragmentation of these financial markets, and we do need to address this. This is crucial. As you know, we have a decisive discussion on the way to complete the banking union and also on the way to develop a capital markets union. This is crucial. The last point is about,
really last.
and I complete, fiscal policy. And again, we have a very important discussion with Minister of Finance with 2 key ideas. When it comes to the fiscal rules, of course, we need to have fiscal responsibility, and we need to rebalance our budget. But we also need to ensure the room to invest, and particularly to deploy what is called, even by IMF today, smart investment. This investment which is critical to leverage private investment. Of course, we know that most of the investment to be done is private. But sometimes the public investment can provide this extra plus, which is enabling strategic investment. So we cannot be tied about that. And the final point is, you should know that we are also discussing in detail the way to complement national budgets with a fiscal capacity in the Eurozone. Every monetary zone in the world does have a fiscal capacity, but the fiscal capacity should be there to focus exactly the strategic priorities for investment. We are discussing about this. I hope these will be elements of the roadmap to come. And again, let me tell you that I really believe that the business community should be clear, vocal, strong, explaining why we need to have this trip. So many thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, regional colleagues. We can go back to that issues on the second round of questions. Now I ask Nicholas Buck to comment on the share of industry in the Brexit, if you want.
Good morning, everybody, and I wanted to thank CIP. I've been in this country for 2 days, visiting the local ecosystem in entrepreneurship, and I think you've got a great setup here, and I can only encourage you to keep continuing to build that ecosystem. So 2 comments, just 30 seconds on Brexit. Clearly, we deeply in Luxembourg regret that decision, and I'm not going to go into the reasons why we believe that happened, but I mainly deeply regret that decision because the English, I'm not going to talk about the Scottish, but I'm going to include the Welsh. The English have a quality that we deeply in Europe. I would even say 2 qualities. One is pragmatism, and 2 is confidence. And I think when a nation decides, when the whole world is telling them don't leave, the whole Europe decides, the elites tell them don't leave, and they say, no, we are strong enough, we believe we can do that, I think we have to ask ourselves the right questions, and that's why, and I think they really have something that the rest of Europe lacks, and that is confidence. And that's why I could only encourage us to keep working with them as closely as we could, because we are going to the Brits to face up to the challenges we face in the future. So that was my comment on Brexit. Now, on industry, I wanted to say a couple of words. I'm not going to talk about Europe because I think there's a lot of specialists on Europe here on the panel, entrepreneurs. So I have a bottom-up approach rather than an approach from the top to the bottom, which is obviously a different way of looking at things. I would say industry, I think first of all we have to reflect on what industry actually is. And industry, we've spent a considerable time in our association thinking about that, and I go back to the word in industry, and the Italian word, indu means inside of me, and struere means to thrive towards, to develop. So there is a concept of industry before, and that word comes out of the Middle Ages, and there's of industry before you see a factory in Manchester in the 19th century or in Detroit in the 20th century. So I think we have to understand and reflect that there's a historical transformation of industry over centuries. You have industry in Venice, you have industry in the Flanders in the 17th century, you have industry in the UK in the 19th century, and industry in the 21st century will look very different to what it was in the 20th century and the 22nd century. I won't be around. It will look very different again. And if we basically reflect on that, then industry becomes the future. It is our future, and we can also open up a world of possibilities, rather arguing our limitation that industry is reduced as the share of GDP. I would say that we are unable today, because we define industry the wrong way, we are unable to actually capture the real weight of GDP in our economies. I work in software today. It's one of the most highly capitalistic industries in the world. You're going to spend $1 billion to build an automotive assembly plant. You want to build a tier 1 data center, you're going to have to spend $180 million. Need 2 of those for contingency, that's 360. So software, for example, is absolutely part of industry, and we should therefore stop also the discussion. And every minister I ever meet, whether it's our ministers or I was listening to the Minister of Finance, he uses that word diversification. And that is a word that's been used for many, the politicians always want to diversify. Instead of saying, well, I've got an industrial footprint, an economic footprint, all I have to do is really transform, accept that some of that will disappear, and connect the startups, the innovation with my economic corporate, connect them together, and they will blossom. Then I think just on how to grow it, I think we can answer that question later on the panel. There's 3 horizontal that affect all of these industries, because there's industries and not industry. One is globalization, everybody knows that. The other one is digitalization, and the third one is climate change. And for every business in this world, those 3 will stay there, and if all 3 will affect you dramatically in the future. But I think that the prospect for industries are very good in the future, also in Europe. 3 reasons. One is urbanization. So, you're going to have to find industrial solutions for those cities that are going to grow. One is massive amount of demography. So you've got demographic growth. So all we have to do is increase our ability to export, or we attract more people to live in Europe, or we improve our capability to sell our products in the rest of the world. And the third one is probably the most contentious point I will make this morning, is one industry has won tremendously over the last 30 years in terms of share of GDP. That is the financial industry. And clearly the financial industry has the ability today, and financial, I don't just look banking, I look equity, venture, or everything, asset management. And today they have the ability to attract the smartest brains in Europe. The smartest people go and work in finance. And why is that? Because the perks are the highest, and clearly it is an incredible space for opportunities, and you can acquire an incredible amount of wealth in that space. Now, with financial regulation, with deleveraging, will come the question, is that space going to be as attractive for younger generations to work in as it was in the future? And it will potentially reduce in attractiveness in terms of governments and contribution to their budgets. So you have a force there where potentially governments will look at that space where I get less tax revenue. The highest taxpayer, corporate taxpayer in Belgium is ING. It's 350 million euros on revenues of 2 billion, plus a bank tax of 300 million. So you can just imagine their EBIT, if you look at their capability of creating cash is tremendous. So I think there's positives for us, and I would close there.
Okay, thank you very much. Loic Armand, your initial comments, please.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Do you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me at this crucial moment. There are three questions, and I can give three short answers. What is the future of Europe? My answer would be it could be bright or brighter. What is the future of Europe? The answer would be what we will make it. And is there any future for Europe without industry? The answer will be certainly not. First of all, I would like, if we have British colleagues in the room. I hope so. We have. We are on July 1st, 2016. 100 years ago started the Battle of Somme during the First World War on 1st of July 1916. And to pay tribute to the 480,000 young British killed or wounded to protect us. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say that the peace cannot be taken for granted forever. And this is the background of our discussion today. UK is our best ally in the world, one of the largest economies, our colleagues, our friends, and once again I must say that they are mostly welcome to spend their next summer in Provence, in Normandy, and wherever they want. Now, to answer your questions, I can take it from my experience, 33 years in L'Oréal company, as the chair of the MEDEF, of the European Committee of MEDEF, and also as the president of Cosmetic Europe, the European Federation for Cosmetics. I'm a committed European, and I'm here because I don't want to let it broken to my children and grandchildren. We are going from crisis to crisis because we are unable to fully accept that the world has entered in a revolutionary process. Globalization, energy transition, as you said, and digital revolution. This is a lot of threat and a lot of opportunities we have to take. I'm fascinated by the fact, and starting from my experience in L'Oréal, that we are facing an incredible opportunity with the development of the middle classes in emerging countries. We know that in the 15 years to come, we'll get 1.5 billion more consumers that will get the resources to buy our products. And this is the result of an economic trends and demographic trends, and this happens now. And in 15 years' time, it will be too late. So the question, we want to let it to non-EU economic powers. I may ask the question, where is the EU policy for a bold development of Africa, our south, our new frontier? And by the way, do we feel comfortable and consistent with our values to stop with machine guns on boats or by raising barriers? Certainly not. The development of the south of the Mediterranean is the only one solution to the migrant question. A key principles to be successful in our quest for a better and stronger industry in Europe. I would say first, education and training. Lifelong training, apprenticeship, filling the growing gap between skills and jobs. Cross-border apprenticeship in Europe. People are the future of Europe. By the way, if you look at the UK referendum, 75% of the young people and 70% of the businesses were supporting the stay. Their future was stolen by the fear of globalization, plus some other mistakes I may stress later if I'm given time. We have a Franco-German pilot on a kind of Erasmus apprenticeship, and L'Oréal, my company, is in this pilot. We must create an harmonization on technical education system, as we did at U level with the licensed master doctorate harmonization. Second principle, anticipating consumer needs. At L'Oréal, we call it universalization. It means that we do not sell French beauty everywhere, but we sell beauty for all. We need to keep on investing on research and innovation. We need to keep our research center in Europe. We need to keep our headquarters in Europe, and for that we require fair but business-friendly corporate laws and tax systems. Third, the digital revolution has to be tackled. Projects like Industry the Future in France, Industry 4.0 in Germany, Product Tech in Portugal, and we need to build bridges between them. I think that Commissioner Oettinger is trying to do so. Fourth, our development must be sustainable. At L'Oréal, we consider that sustainability must be built inside, from the very beginning of the design of the product, not only at the manufacturing stage. This is not a cost, it's a long-term competitive advantage and a moral obligation as well. Fifth, I would advise to choose the premium positioning, but not to give up the mass market. At L'Oréal, we do both. We manufacture where the market is. We manufacture in Europe for Europe, mass market products, in China for China and the region, in India for India, in Brazil for Brazil, in the US for North America. Each time a market has a critical size that allows the same productivity level, the quality is the same. Manufacture in France 70% of the luxury product we sell throughout the world. It's possible to manufacture in Europe and sell everywhere in the world. So there is a future for industry in Europe. Now, what is the role of Europe? What do we need? We need Europe to secure a competitive environment, reducing administrative burden, and ensuring a fair level playing field. We are in a world of giants, and we need Europe. Fair regulation and a room for true self-regulation. True self-regulation, a clear commitment, an audit of the result, and the dialogue with the stakeholders. If we have the three pillars, you have a self-regulation that is as effective, as even better than a regulation. And now I would like to emit a kind of, I think Europe must stop to legislate on emotions, window dressing, and discriminatory sectorial measures, what I call the 1% legislation. A sector representing 1% of the problem will get specific legislation just for this sector. I know it by heart because the cosmetic sector is one of the victims of this window dressing legislation. NGOs and politicians do not have the monopoly of art. Large companies and companies are driving the social and societal progresses worldwide. There is room for self-regulation. At the Web 3.0 era, we get connected every day with our consumers. We, L'Oréal, for example, we sell 7 billion products a year. There are 7 billion ballots of confidence. Who can say more? And with all the respect I have for the institution and for the politicians, they do their job. I would say, who are you, politicians, to give us lessons of morale? I'm telling my European friends very respectfully, unnecessary legislation is immoral. Comprehensive trade deals are important. TTIP used to be the opportunity of the decade. But my king, the people in charge, please do not throw the baby with the water of the bath. There is still room for smart regulatory convergence, allowing SMEs to compete and export. Let's try to get it done. down. Because regulatory convergence is the name of the game for the 10 years to come if we want up our European industry. So now, to finish, what's wrong with Europe today? We published last week or the week before with Pierre Gattaz, the president of MEDEF, a Tribune, an article in the title was, "If Europe did not exist, we should invent it now." We have to reinvent Europe. There is, what's obvious is that there is a huge gap between the insiders, that is the people, the system, that live with the system or that understand the system, many of us, I'm an insider, and the people. People want security and jobs and a future for their children. This is what they want, no more. We, the insiders, we want single market to be completed and the Eurozone governance. The four objectives are good, but we don't say the same and we don't talk the same language to the same people. The four objectives are necessary, but we don't understand each other. And if we do not answer the people need, the EU will disappear. What's sure is that none of them want federalism. Federalism was dead in 2005 when the constitutional law was. We want something else. We want to aggregate added value. We want to work collectively, and we want to do better. We want to do better what we can do better together than alone, as said by Emma before. We look for not an ever closer union. We are looking for a better Europe based on value-added policies. And to end, just to say that we have the Europe we deserve. And if we are not happy with Europe as it is, my final advice, and what I'm trying to do every day, is to engage. Time has come for the business to stand up and to speak up and to say to all the people in charge, we cannot let the European dream to be broken.
Thank you. Guillermo Laccia.
Bon dia, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, thank you very much for inviting COE to participate in this interesting debate regarding the future of industry. Seems to me like we are at another fork in the road. In other words, we need to learn how we are going to overcome or how to afford the unknown consequences of the Brexit. That's clear. But we need to keep in mind or remember that since the beginning of the millennium, Europe has been challenged to many difficulties with euro, economic growth, sustainability, job creation and employability, and recently the growing threat of terrorism. And working together, we have been able really to overcome those issues. Then even in these difficult times, from my point of view, manufacturing will remain for European countries because it's a key driver for research, innovation, job creation, productivity, and exports. Although high levels of manufacturing employment, I think, will not return due to productivity increases and the global competition. In the figures in Spain, industry means 13.3% of the gross added value and 17% including energy sector. It employs around 1 million people, irresponsible for 90% of export of Spanish goods. It triggers 48% of R&D expenses. In other words, Spain is fitting very well with the average industrial profile of Europe. And as my predecessor said, there is room for improvement. Therefore, we are lucky because we can do better and we are going to do it faster, surely. Because I don't want to save time, I'm going to repeat the global challenges, but I would like to use the pragmatism approach of the English people, saying that if we are dealing with industry in the future, we should be, first of all, pragmatic. the share of the manufacturing in total economic activity is not going to rebound substantially in most European countries. And I am saying that because the demand for manufactured products will remain soft, and we need to increase productivity if really we want to keep competition. And there is another important issue that we need to keep in mind, is the huge amount of installed capacity in Asia. We need to be innovative because, as everybody is saying here, manufacturing evolves to another paradigm, looking for high activities where intangible assets like R&D, marketing, design, financial, and after-sales services are going to play an important role in the growing segmentation of manufacturing activities. And finally, we need to be global minded because manufacturing production continues to be more affected at the global level. Therefore, in order to be short, the key issue for us should be what type of manufacturing activities and jobs will ensure Europe's future prosperity. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have a round. Markus, Beyrer, your remarks, initial remarks, please.
Well, thank you. Well, let me start by thanking our member here as President Emma Macigalati at CIP for this conference, because I think this is an excellent venue and we are happy to have a strong partner in Portugal, happening in the venue of our other member, AIP, so this makes us particularly happy. Then I also wanted to congratulate Portugal on the victory yesterday and going to the semifinals. And, well, I'm European, but of course I'm also Austrian. And
you're not Polish, so...
No, we had a saying, traditionally we had a saying in the old days, a draw is a victory for Austria, but you have proven us better. A draw is very clearly a victory for Portugal, and I would like to congratulate on this.
Thank you.
Well, before I come to the industry part, let me of course say 2 or 3 words about, because the question has been raised about the Brexit debate and also about what does it mean for Europe. Well, first of all, I feel very sorry. I feel sorry because I think this is a bad thing for everybody. I feel sorry for the young British who are really desperate for what happened. My kids are going to British school in Brussels, so we have a lot of contacts in extension to what I do in business, and many people feel very sorry, and this is a very unpleasant happening. At the same time, of course, now it is for us, business, to bring in the rationale part into this debate, and of course it's for us to mitigate the damages, and it's for us to make sure that we do this in a rational way. And of course, when I say in a rational and a friendly way, of course, this will have to be based on rules as well, because otherwise it will not work. But we need to do it in a way, and we need to make sure that we can mitigate the damage on the side of the EU27, but of course also on the side of the British business, and we will do together with our British member and partner, the CBI. Then on a more personal term, I must say I'm really puzzled on the amount of lies which have been produced in this campaign, and on the rapidity. This has been more or less become obvious, and on the nonchalance, those who have issued these lies are dealing with it. Because when on the next day after the referendum, it's very clear that the major things which might have influenced many of the voters are not deliverable, and those who were campaigning for it saying, yes, of course we will not deliver on this because this is not possible, but anyhow, if you believed it, too bad for you, it was a campaign, what do you think? So this is something, for me at least, I've never seen, and this is very preoccupying. So, of course, for Europe, it means that we are in a difficult situation. It means, as I say, we have to go on to do this in a party. But it also means that we have to think about what do we have to and what will we have to do better. But I think in doing so, we need to do it in the right way. First of all, we will have to give the answers to the right questions. And this is not necessarily the questions which have been raised in the referendum. because for many reasons this was a little bit of a different story, and this was more about intra-English politics, or maybe even more intra-Tory politics, than it has ever been about Europe. Which doesn't mean that we need not to explicitly improve our project to make it stronger. And Maria João has made quite a number of I would absolutely sign up to. But it also means that, and Emma Machigalia said it, we will need to change our narrative. Because what happened so far is that we all said, well, we need a better Europe, but then we all added more or less the messages we had throughout the last 5 years. So at the end of the day, if we all continue to do so, this will not work, because it will only leave the people with the feeling, well, we need to improve it because it's not good, and then everybody says something different and there's no plan. So we all have to do a step back to discuss, to think, and then to propose a good and a common way forward. And maybe commenting on what Luik said, he's right. We need a Europe that adds value. I would say we also need, of course, changes on European level, but we also need changes in the commitment of national politicians, because very often what we see, and the whole debate about the Canada Agreement is an example, we are providing the Commission with a mandate, they negotiate things within the mandate, member states are constantly informed and agree on all steps, and then when the thing is at the table, they go home and say, incredible what the guys in Brussels did, and we cannot be for it. So as long as we go on like this, it will not work. So we will all have to improve. So on a better Europe, and then I'll come to industry, but sorry, it's such an interesting route. On a better Europe. I think the debate about, of course, it's clear that we cannot, there are certain things we need to improve and to deepen, but it's clear that we cannot just say, go on, go on, go on, deepen. And I think this is a point which is very well taken. But I think this federalism, non-federalism, better, not better Europe is a little bit artificial. We have the instrument in the treaties, because we have a subsidiarity in the treaties coming from the Treaty of Maastricht, which is absolutely reflecting, but we are not living it. Like in many other fields, we have the plan, but we're not implementing it. The principle of the subsidiarity comes from Christian, from Catholic religion, from the encyclical Quadragesimo Anno and Rerum Novarum, but it's different. In this instead, the higher entity only takes over when the lower entity is no longer able to do. The one we have in Europe is it should be done at the level which can do best. So it's about better. So we have the concept, and there is points where we'll need more Europe, where people are absolutely unsatisfied because we didn't deliver. Like, for instance, the protection of our external borders, because if we're not able to protect our external borders, people will not believe it. But there's also things where we might need less Europe, and maybe there's regulations we should think about whether this is something which cannot be better done elsewhere. So I think we have the instruments, and we are not always implementing them. And if we, as we are here in the very room where we had the Lisbon Council in the year 2000, we had the pleasure to already work together with Maria João, I think we had the instruments back then. We had a clear way, we had a clear strategy, we had a clear route. They were all right, and I think today we agree on them, but the problem is we didn't implement. So I think this is the things we will have to think about. So coming to industry. Well, a lot has been said, but let me underline the question to say the future of industry in Europe. I think we have to reverse the question saying, is there a future of Europe's industry? And my answer is a clear no. We have seen in the crisis that it's the countries which have a competitive manufacturing core in their economies which did best and which came out of the crisis well, and the others had more problems. So this is very important. Even so, we had a decline in the share of industrial production to the overall European output. This is still 55 million jobs. This is still 80% of private investment in R&D, and so on and so on. But I will spare you the figures. But I wanted to come to some new figures we are having, because since yesterday I talk about it. It's a study the member of our Italian members, so Asso Lombarda, member of Confindustria, was doing together with Bocconi University, and they were having a close look at the 5 leading industrial regions in Europe, which are Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg, Rhône-Alpes, and Catalonia. And there was many results, and we will roll them out, but the very core for me is, and the very striking things is, that these regions, these 5 regions alone, they're responsible for 12.5% of the European GDP and for close to 20% of the value added. So if these figures are striking, it means that more than ever, this is about the industrial core. So what do we have to do? Well, first, and this is also to what Louis rightly mentioned, we need to change our governance. Very often we know what we have to do, but we don't set the right priorities. I mean, meaning we have all kinds of things which are produced, and there is no clearing. So there's more behind this, but I do not want to be too long. So for us in Council, it's very much the Competitiveness Council, which have to speak up in the sense of industry and of the economy, and which have to be the watchdog. Then, of course, it's about digitalization, and Nicola very rightly underlined this. The Roland Berger did a study for our German member at BDI, saying if we get the digitalization of European industry right, we can add 1.25 trillion value added by 2025. If we blow it, we'll lose 600 billion, which is basically 10% of our industrial base. So in between these two poles, there is growth and happiness, tears and unemployment. So this is what we really need to get right. Mm-hmm. Then, Emma talked about it, innovation. It's very clear. We are a rich continent, we are an old continent, we are an aging continent. So we need to be more innovative than the others, and we are not always, and there's reasons for this. I think we will work, and this is something from the Assa Lombardo study, I had a look yesterday, is apparently there's an even stronger link between patents and success. So we will have to again rethink our system of patents. We made improvements in this European patent system, but it's still too expensive. But then we need, and Emma mentioned the innovation principle, we need a different approach to risk. At the time being, we are having a system which is not managing risks, but which is trying to exclude risks ex ante. And this leads, of course, to the end of progress, and this is something we have to repair. Then, of course, there's the cost of energy. No time to really go into details, but even with this, our electricity, industrial electricity prices are still 2.5 times higher than the ones in the US. Labor markets, very important. We've seen it in the markets where the reforms have been done. We create jobs. The study shows that the important thing is also how do you remunerate. So it shows that the regions are the most important where you have quite an extent of remuneration based on performance and not so much on the average. So this is something where we as social partners will have a role. And also maybe, Maria João, when we talk about the social pillar, where we have to think about benchmarks. So very important. And maybe let me quote one of the guys who have been responsible for the Agenda 2010 in Germany, Mr. Clement, who just recently said, social is what creates jobs. And I couldn't agree more. Then, open markets. I'm done in 2 minutes. So open markets. Because this is, and I don't have time, as you remind me, to go into details of CETA, TTIP, and so on. But 2 thoughts. We're in a situation now where people are afraid of globalization. We're in a situation now where more than ever we have to fight against protectionism. And we see it within Europe. And we also see it when we talk about trade. So the truth is, we need to be successful there. Because even if we get everything right in Europe, it's a mere question of demography that most of the growth will still happen outside Europe. So we need to have access to these markets. And the last point, but I can be very brief on this because Emma touched upon, is the investment. Of course, public investment is important. Of course, public investment can trigger. And of course, it's also low in average. But we have to see this in a precise way. There's countries with margin, like for instance Germany, and we very much agree they should invest more. There's countries which don't have the margin, and there the answer is they have to invest better. They have to better use the public spending they have to trigger the right things. But at the end, of course, the major chunk has to come from private investment because this is where growth comes from. And I'll stop here, and I thank you for granting me.
We can return to that issue on the second round. Thank you. Luís Miramaral, please.
Okay, good morning. We are running the Brexit, but I am going to speak English, and I do appreciate very much the British pragmatism. So, as we know, monetary policy alone is not able to overcome our economic problems. ECB is only buying time, and I must emphasize that this very loose monetary policy is not sustainable in medium term. So, in this framework, we must complement the ECB monetary policy with the fiscal policy, structural reforms, and supply-side policy. In this framework, when we speak about supply-side policy, I take into account, obviously, the industrial policy for Europe, and I will explain later this concept. And I want also to spend a minute about energy. In Europe, we have only a fundamentalist green policy where energy is only a byproduct. Europe and Japan are the economic regions with the highest energy prices all over the world. In the last century, industrial delocalization was made to emerging countries. Due to this, now, European industry is facing the threat of the delocalization to the United States of America due to the shale gas revolution in the United States and due, obviously, to lower energy price in the United States. So energy matters for European industrial competitiveness. It's important also to address our fiscal non-competitiveness, our high labor costs, and the high energy price. About the industrialization, take into account that the West has begun again to think about industry because there is a connection between industrial production, technological development, innovation, and qualified labor force. This movement began in the United States to combat the industrialization process, and the United States launched programs to promote advanced manufacturing. So we cannot allow industry to come to a standstill, and at the same time, Germany came up with the concept of Industry 4.0. There, Germany didn't have the problem of the industrialization as faced United States, but Germany wants, obviously, to upgrade the industrial sectors where Germany excels, and namely capital goods, automotive sectors, and so on. And I want to explain briefly what means Industry 4.0. Mainly three dimensions. First of all, horizontal integration of different companies through value networks. Second dimension, end-to-end digital integration of engineering across the entire value chain. I must emphasize that we are speaking about digital technologies, not only in the future, but through the whole value chain of the company. Third dimension, in the factory, in the floor, vertical integration and network manufacturing systems. We are approaching so-called CPS, cyber physical system. I mean the integration between the physical and digital system. As a former electrical engineer, I am delighted with the Industry 4.0. As you understand, Portuguese government is also delighted with the Industry 4.0, but I must emphasize that Portuguese problem is not only to apply Industry 4.0. Unfortunately for Portugal, Portuguese industrial policy must be much more than this. So in CIP, we are working in the program to propose a new industrial policy to Portugal with a new program to develop the industry and tradable sectors. We take obviously into account Industry 4.0, but as a former economic minister of the Portuguese government, I say, and I want to explain, I have no time to explain much more, but our problem, our design flaws in our economic business model are not solved only with the concept of Industry 4.0. I must emphasize this very clearly. So digital revolution has made fundamental and big transformations in the way people communicate and do business the world over. Well, in Portugal, we must understand that we must inject the knowledge and the engineers into our companies. We need to approach so-called knowledge-based economy. This is crucial for the Portuguese economy. And the reindustrialization does means the emphasis on the relocation of research for the production of tradable goods and services in the primary, secondary, and service sector, a much higher national added value, using the European concept of CATS, key enabling technologies. The cluster idea that I introduced in Portugal as Portuguese minister in 1992 with Professor Porter, the concept of Porter was introduced the cluster was introduced in Portugal at this time, and also is crucial for Portuguese industry and for Portuguese economy to reinforce the links between the universities and the business. So this is a problem, a very deep problem in Portugal. This is not yet solved. I explained you that only 2% of our PhDs work in the business. So we spend a lot of money in research, but we must. The Portuguese problem now is not research, where with the support of European structural funds, we had a big upside in the last years. Our crucial problem is innovation. And innovation means to use the knowledge, applying the knowledge to the companies, to differentiate from the peers, moving from new products and new processes. This is a crucial problem for Portugal, and you understand, if an economy creates knowledge, and after the economy does apply the knowledge to business, the economy does grow. This is the crucial problem for Portugal. So it is very crucial to create PhDs. It's a nice idea, but it's also very crucial to inject them in the Portuguese companies. And unfortunately, only 2% of our PhDs are working in the companies. So Portuguese economy must develop another business model, and it's not enough to apply the German concept of Industry 4.0 because they want to excel in sectors where they are competitive in global markets. Our Portuguese business model have other design flaws that we must to overcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we are half an hour late looking for our schedule, so we must have now shorter answers, please. Maria João Rodrigues, let me talk with you about the regulatory process in Europe, which is one of the main tasks of the European Union. How can we balance this kind of regulations, effective regulations, with the need to some competitiveness in the industry?
Well, I will now make very short answer. Is making sure that we really use the principle of subsidiarity. So European action is needed in some situations. Sometimes this is not needed, so we need to be very clear on this. And in fact, there is a central debate now taking everywhere about this, and this means that we need to adapt the current regulation to this principle. And the second one is the concern which was raised from our side on the so-called innovation principle, because this is really crucial. What really matters is not only investing in knowledge, is turning knowledge into new products and new services. And for this, we need to have a clear innovation principle. Of course, we are also committed with sustainable development. All these ideas were underlined in this panel, But from my viewpoint, what is at stake is to find out the right balance between innovation on one hand, which is really needed to create more and better jobs, and the concern with sustainable development. And frankly, I think we are still not there. So we need to go deeper in this discussion.
Thank you. Nicholas Buck, you're an entrepreneur. What role do you see for the startups in this Industry 4.0 era?
But I think I'm going to give you an example. You take this plastic bottle. You want to produce this bottle. There's an intermediate step. There's a tube. So there's no startups needed. And that's a process that exists. Now in China, Coca-Cola, they've started to put barcodes into here, and you can win. You put your mobile phone, and you can see if you win something special, etc. So there, if you want to do that, well, the whole application that was to win the game and how to put that in was developed startup. So you've got a combination between a startup, a large manufacturer, and a B2C company like Coca-Cola. So I think it's the startups are an essential element of this transformation of large, medium-sized companies. The problem with a large company, usually when they've been successful, is there's cash, there's ways of doing things, and you clearly have sometimes a form of complacency that clearly when you've been doing something successfully for 10 years, you kind of assume, well, I can do that for the other 10 years. And changing is very painful, especially change. So you need the startups for the open innovation. And clearly startups run out of money. And I can tell you, I'm an entrepreneur, and the biggest driver for entrepreneurship is fear. When you're running out of cash, I can tell you, you're going to put in that extra phone call. You're not going to go on holiday. You don't think about working. You're working 16 hours, and all the staff is working 16 hours with you because they know this could be the end of the game if you don't perform. So I think startups bring in that form of intensity that on stock markets used to bring intensity to quoted companies in a sense that they wanted to deliver performance and have a right to play. But startups are an essential element in this transformation. You absolutely need them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're complementary. It's not disruptive. It's supportive.
Yes, we don't have to choose between startups and the classical industry, of course.
And you still need, and I'll close on that, you still need innovation inside large companies. Apply everything, the points that were made here, apply. In Europe, we have a real issue in research, not in the amount of money we spend on research, but it's theoretical research. We need applied research. If you need this, you see the statistics. The Chinese spend 80% of their research on applied research. The Americans do the same thing. It's what the gentleman from Portugal said. It's where you spend 200 million, 300 million, $500 million on higher education in the university sector. But how much does that flow back into businesses?
Thank you.
So I'll close there.
Markus, do you have a comment on this, the roll-ups in this Industry 4.0 era?
Well, I think Nicholas had very well pointed out it from the side of the startups. I think what we need to do now in this digital world is to really fix this digital single market, because what we have and what we hear from many startups is that some of them start in a European member state. Then they find out that the single market is not really there. Then they go to the US. And when they're strong enough to face the differences we have in our market, they come back and grow in Europe. And this is, of course, what we need to fix, because otherwise we'll not get the scale out of this process. And this is why getting the digital single market right now is one of the key issues we will have to be working on in the next year.
Thank you. Loic Harman, you make some points in your initial remarks. One of them was the European companies can put themselves on a premium market or in the mass market, but you prefer, I think, the premium market. Do you think that's the way that European companies...
This is not exactly what I said.
Sorry.
Maybe I'm responsible for this misunderstanding. I mean, we should do both. We absolutely need to be strong in the premium market in order to build image and not to let it to others. But we must not give up the market. We know how to manufacture mass market product in an efficient way. And maybe we need some support. And certainly we need some support from at European level and at national level in order to get the right regulatory framework, corporate tax framework, in order to help us to be competitive. But we know how to do it. So my advice to, if I can give an advice, but what I have to say is that yes, we must address the question of the premium market and be strong in the premium market, but do not. If not, if we give up the mass market, there will be no future for the industry in Europe. And if there is no industry in Europe, there will be no Europe, no creation of wealth.
Thank you. Guillermo Lacha, European companies have a problem in raising capital. Maybe more in some European countries, South European countries like Portugal, Spain, or Italy. How do you see a way to deal with this problem?
This is the million question, right? Everybody's talking about that, how we are going to raise capital, how we are going to increase the performance of the financial system. Nevertheless, I think that at least in Spain we have done a good job, and we are recovering right now the credit flows to companies, and this is good for everybody. And if you don't mind, because there is not too much time, I would like to draw your attention to a couple of things. The first one is when we are talking about industry, the first thing that we should do is to put industry in the heart of the decision-making process, because everybody is talking about industry, but later on is second, third priority for people leading governments. Therefore, makes no sense. Americans say, "Well, the talk." If for you, industry is important, it's going to play an important role. Therefore, please give that priority to everybody. It's true that we need to overcome too many issues like markets, like finance, but we are able to do it. We have done it in the past, and we are going to really do it right now. And the third, and another issue is within Europe. We are still working with the so-called triple elite. Means still being at enterprise, administration, governments, and knowledge base like a university or technical centers are enough for overcoming these difficult times. But we have learned social innovation of how we need to include the social, the society, the civil society into the decision-making process. We cannot let people behind solutions. Then this is going to be one of the keys. If we are just dealing with business and profits and we are not thinking on people, therefore we will face terrible problems.
Thank you. Le Carmant wants to make a remark.
I just want to add that some large companies that used to delocalize their production outside of Europe are starting to reconsider to relocalize their production in Europe for many reasons. One, because for the geopolitical risk sometimes, because this is consistent with their commitment in sustainability commitment. I mean, you cannot develop carbon emission by non-necessary transportation. And also, hopefully, these global companies are acting as responsible companies in every country they work. So, I mean, and hopefully the salaries of the people are increasing also in China or in other countries. There is room for relocalization of production in Europe, and we know how to do it.
Thank you. Mira, to finish this second round. How can we balance the industry needs with the climate change and energy challenges?
How can we?
Balance the industry with the energy challenges.
Well, we must obviously take into account the ecology, the environment, but we must be realist. We must understand that Europe sends only 11% of the global CO2. So it's not possible that Europe will solve the problem alone. And if the emerging countries, the biggest emerging countries in the United States, don't join us fighting also CO2 emissions, it's quite unrealistic to think that Europe is able alone to solve the problem. And I must emphasize that Portugal sends only 0.11% of the world CO2. So it's not realistic to say that our main problem is to fight CO2 emissions. We must take into account, obviously, the ecology, the environment, but we must be realistic. And for Portugal, we must understand quite well, we have a lot of design flaws in our business model. It's not the CO2 our main problem. If we follow the European trends, and it's good, but trying as the former Portuguese government, this government is trying to do, we want to be the best in Europe about CO2 emissions, and Europe wants to be the best, number one in global markets about CO2 emissions. This is not realistic. So I think Portugal has not a serious problem with CO2. Europe must negotiate very well, because you don't know that Paris Agreement, United States signed the Paris Agreement, a non-binding agreement. In the last minute, the text was changed, and the United States signed, not we shall do, but they put we should do. So this slight difference explains that the United States has no binding agreement to fight CO2. But Europe wants a binding agreement. We must work with China, other big emerging countries, and we are not able alone to solve the problem. This is a realistic approach. Is not forget the sentiments, the ecology, but this is, in this way, we must conciliate, obviously, industrial competitiveness with the energy and green policy.
Thank you. Well, we are maybe 10 minutes late. I know that João has a plan to get a flight. But I think we can accept one question from the audience, if there is one short question or one or two. Yes, of course, but we are over the schedule. So there's no questions.
No doubts.
Okay,
No doubts.
Thank you all. We finished the panel. We'll have a coffee break now, and we'll be back in 15 minutes. Thank you.